Welcome to this tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to continue with our series of Excel Power Pivot tutorials that we've been covering. So in this tutorial, we're going to be looking at using some functions within our formulas. So in the previous tutorial, we looked at how we could do some simple calculations by using our field names. In this tutorial though, we're going to be looking at some functions. And you're going to see that these functions are very much like what you would work with if you were working with Excel. So Power Pivot uses a formula language called DAX, which stands for Data Analysis Expressions. And as I say, you're going to see a lot of formulas that are exactly the same as Excel, which makes it really easy for us to be able to move across from Excel into our Power Pivot. So in this one, we're going to be looking at some date formulas. We're going to look at how we get our year, how we get our month number, how we get our weekday. We're going to look at a couple of different options that we can do with those functions. But yet again, please remember to subscribe and like the channel, and let's jump into the tutorial. I will see you there. Welcome to this tutorial. So in this tutorial, I'd like to go back into our Power Pivot, and we're going to explore the ability to be able to create some calculations within your Power Pivot. So we're going to be looking at some functions. So we've got a sales date, and often what you might want to do with your sales date is you might want to pull out specific information about it. So you might want to say, well, what is the year, or what is the month, or what is the day? So you might want to get the different information around that from there. So traditionally in Excel, we would use functions for this. We would use our equals year or equals month. Now you're going to find that when you're working with Power Pivot, you're working with a formula language called DAX, which stands for Data Analysis Expressions. Now, in a lot of ways, it's very similar to Excel, which is actually great for us because it makes it easy for us to start using it. So if we wanted to know what is the year, then basically we would just be using the equals year function. So let's have a look at that. So let's see how we would create that. So we're going to add a new column. I'm going to go to the end here. I'm going to double click on this like we did earlier. And we're just going to say we want to have a new field called our year. So we're going to go back to our formula again. So remember, we've got the equal sign. And basically what I'm going to start typing is YE. And you'll start to see now that it will give me a whole bunch of functions that all have the YE in it. So year is one of these functions. Also, if you're familiar with your Excel functions, you might be seeing here some functions that you don't get in Excel. So DAX does have more functions and different functions to what you would find in Excel. Okay, so we're going to double click on year, and it will then say, what is the date that we're using? So in this case, we want to know the year of the sales date. So again, we can use our left square bracket. Remember, use left square bracket, you press that. You can go down, we're going to choose our sales date, and we'll select that. Just remember to close your parentheses because we're closing the function. So you can see now that our function is equals year of the sales date, and we press enter on that. And you'll see now that we now have the year that has been created. And the great thing about that is we can now start to use this as a field in our data analysis. So you remember in the previous tutorial how we used our pivot table and our pivot chart. So let's go back to Excel. You remember that we can go back to Excel by switch to workbook. Select on that, and there's the pivot chart we created in the previous tutorial. Let's go back to our pivot table that we were creating. And here we had our sub-region on our business segment. Let's go back and take our business segment, and we'll just have our different countries and our sales. But what if you now wanted to see what was this by our different years? So now because you've got the field year, you can put it in your columns, and there we go. We can now use it in our data analysis to be able to see the different years. Another option that we could do is that if you've ever worked with slices, you can use your slices with your pivot tables. So we can do the same here. If you go back to your pivot table, analyze, and you go insert slicer, and you can now pick the year as a field. So we can say we want a slicer, and there's my different years. And now what this will do is actually filter your pivot table. So as you can see, when I pick the different years now, it's now actually filtering according to the selection of those years. So it's really nice when you create new different fields that you can use in your data analysis. Okay, if we want to remove the filter, we can do that. Let's go back to our Power Pivot and go back to our data model. And let's say we wanted to know what the month number was. So we'll continue with this. We'll say month. It's the name of the field. Again, now it's going to ask me what the formula is. And just like in Excel, we would just use equals month. So there we go. We've got our month function. And double click on that. Again, like we did previously, it'll say what is the date left square bracket, use your sales date. And we're now saying we want to know the month number for the sales date. So press enter on that. And there we go. We now have the month number to be able to work with. So again, you might want to use that in your data analysis. So let's go back to our Excel again. You'll remember from the previous tutorial, we created the pivot chart. Now in this case, what we did was we created a column chart. Let's say we wanted to change this. We wanted actually a different type of chart. So what you can do on your design is you could say, I want to change this chart type. So let's say we actually want to see this as a line chart. So I'm going to say line. Let's now change that to a line. Instead of using business segment, let's take that out. Let's go down and let's use our month number. Drop that in there. So now we're getting a trend graph where basically we can see the sales for each of the different months. Again, you might want to be able to use your different filters on this. So let's go back to our pivot chart to analyze. Say you insert a slicer. Let's say you use your year. So you got your different years now. And if you want to see what your trend was for your sales, you can see now by year. You can easily do that. You can actually have more than one slicer. So if we remove the filter there, go back to your slicer. Actually, in this case, let's go back to our pivot chart. And we want to insert a new slicer. Let's say we're going to use, let's use our countries. So our sub-region, click OK on that. So you could say, I want to now see by month, what was my sales value in Germany in 2022? And there we go. You can now see that you get the ability to be able to change these. So that's the beauty of being able to work with your slices, but also the nice thing is once we start creating new fields, in this case month, gives us another way of being able to look at your data. Okay, let's go back to our Power Pivot again. Let's go back to our data model. So let's look at another option. Now, one of the options you could do is you could look at things by your different weekdays. So you might want to know what is my sales on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday. So we have a function actually called Weekday. I'm going to call this the Weekday. And we're going to say that we'll create that as well. And with the weekday, again, we're going to go back to our formulas. And as I say, we got a formula called weekday. The reality is it's the same in Excel as well. You would use weekday. Again, though, remember we're working with fields. So it's going to ask us what is the date. We're going to say we're using the sales date. So left square bracket, SA will give us the sales date. Again, remember to close your parentheses, press enter on that. And now you can see that you've got the day of the week that has been created. Again, if we go back into Excel, let's look at a bit of analysis. Let's just remove the slicer and let's go back to these fields. So you can see all of these fields are now being added back in real time, back into your pivot table tables. Again, if you know your pivot tables in Excel, often you have to do a refresh. But when you're working with Power Pivot, there is no refresh, it automatically updates. So let's take the sub-region out on this. Let's use our weekday. And with your weekday, you'll see that you get day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. Now it's difficult to know, is that a Sunday, or is it a Monday, or is it a Tuesday? So what we can actually do is we can actually create a new field, and we can say we want to use the weekday name. So again, let's go back to our data model. And in this case, we're going to say we want to know our weekday name. We've got a weekday name there. Again, we're going to put a formula in here. However, this one's a little bit different to what you'd use in Excel. So in Excel, you'd use an equals text formula. We're going to use an equals format formula. So we're going to say format. And again, it's asking us what value are we formatting here. So we're going to say we want our sales date again. So you must make sure you're choosing your sales date. Don't choose your sales values. And then it will say comma, what is the format we want? Now let's say we want the full name of the weekday. We want Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. What you would do is you use quotations and then you put 4 Ds. Now it doesn't matter if you use 4 large Ds or 4 small Ds, it would still work. And when we press enter on that, you'll see that we get the full name of the weekday. So we now know that weekday number 4 is actually a Wednesday. Weekday number 2 is actually a Monday. If you wanted to see the shortened version, just use 3 Ds in your formatting. Again, press enter on that, and now we got the shortened version for that. Okay, let's look at the results of that, because when we go back to Excel, we've now got the weekday here. So let's take this out. I'll just drag it, drop it somewhere into the spreadsheet. We're going to use our weekday name. And you'll see there's a bit of a problem here because it's not actually in a chronological order. We've got Friday, Monday, Saturday, Sunday. So what it's actually done is it's actually put this in alphabetical order. So we need a way of being able to tell this what the correct order is for this. And the reality is we've actually got the weekday number, which tells us the correct order. So what we can do in Power Pivot is we can go to our Manage Data Model. We can go to our weekday name, and we can actually pick something called Sort by Column. When we pick on Sort by Column, we'll say we want to sort by the column. So we're going to say the weekday name is going to be sorted by, in this case, we're going to say the weekday, which is the weekday number. So we're going to click on OK for that. Okay, so we set that up, done the sort by. Let's go back to Excel. And now you'll see that it's in the proper chronological order. So that's how we sort that out. Okay, so we're going to conclude that tutorial there. I hope to see you in the next one.